Back in the mid-'80s, this band emerged from the metal scene. They were named White Zombie. They're named after this Bela Lugosi film of the same name. They were really ahead of their time. They started as a noise rock band, but then became popular with hits like Thunder Kiss 65. One of the reasons they broke out was because it was a time when groove metal and industrial metal were becoming very popular. Unfortunately, this band broke up and Rob Zombie went solo. So in this video, I want to focus on his albums Hellbilly Deluxe from 1998, the sequel Hellbilly Deluxe Part 2 from 2010. Then I want to go deeper into the tracks in Part 2 as it is celebrating its 15th anniversary. Was released on February 2nd, 2010, and I will be revealing some surprise guests who played on these albums. So here's today's agenda. Number 1, the history of Hellbilly Deluxe from 1998. Number 2, history of Hellbilly Deluxe Part 2 from 2010. Number 3, track by track of Hellbilly Deluxe 2. And number 4, is Hellbilly Deluxe any good? Let's talk about the first album. It's his debut album. And he left White Zombie, and he wanted to establish his own signature sound and aesthetic as a solo artist. And he was actually very popular, more popular than his original band. His intention was to establish his place in the shock rock scene. So one thing you can observe in the first album is that Rob Zombie is obsessed with horror movies, specifically the older ones, the B movies, the ones from like the 50s and around that time. He wanted to say it was a total zombie extravaganza and no small self-indulgent album filled with whining about deep feelings. There were a couple of movies he made references to. For example, the song Living Dead Girl was referenced to La Morte Vivante, which is an old horror film. And the song Dragula actually referenced the vehicle from the TV series The Munsters. The sound was industrial metal. He mixed a lot of heavy metal elements with industrial and electronics. And he used a lot of B-movie sound clips. He defined his style on this album, so he used his unique vocal delivery, his distinct lyrical style. He wanted to make a very theatrical album. His original intention was to make it more electronic. He originally worked with Charlie Clouser of Nine Inch Nails, but then he changed producers. He went with Scott Humphrey. This album was a commercial success. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200, sold 121,000 copies in the first week. This album had a lot of singles. It had Dragula, Living Dead Girl, Super Beast, the type of album that was really known for its singles. There was a little bit of controversy though. Walmart refused to carry it without an edited version, and they removed explicit imagery and lyrics, and he had to make an edited version and modify the art and track listings. And Rob Zombie did this. He was reluctant to do it, but he just went with it. As far as the artwork, the album had a 24-page booklet. It featured lyrics, comics, and art by Basil Gogos, Gene Coughlin, and Dan Barrettin. And this booklet had images of ghosts, goblins, monsters, and other creatures, references to Lucifer and Satan. All this fun horror movie stuff is very campy. It just showed his love of the horror movies. And this album also has a surprise drummer who played on 2 of the songs. That is Tommy Lee of Motley Crue. Now, when I talk about the second album, there will be another surprise drummer, so stay tuned for that. So let me talk about Hellbilly Deluxe Part 2. It was released in 2010, 12 years after the first one. He wanted to recapture the sound and aesthetic of the first album, but he did this in collaboration with his touring band instead of just this rotating cast of musicians. It's basically a direct sequel. It's a callback to Hellbilly Deluxe, just stylistically, thematically. Rob Zombie said he wanted to return to the old ways of doing things. Like I said, it was more of a band effort. He wanted to play with all the people who he was working with over the years and treated them more like a band. As far as the artists, he collaborated with artists like Dan Barrettin, Alex Horley, and David Hartman, and Sam Shearton. And this album was also delayed a little bit because Rob Zombie, if you know, he's also a movie director, and he was working on Halloween 2, and he was working on promoting it. so that's why it was delayed a little bit. And it was also released through Roadrunner Records and Loud and Proud Records instead of Geffen, which was Rob Zombie's label for the previous 18 years. It was reissued, and there was some bonus material with the surprise drummer who I was talking about, and that is Joey Jordison. So I thought that's pretty cool. Joey Jordison, we know he passed away not too long ago. He was a longtime drummer of Slipknot, and he did lots of work with other bands. So he did work with Rob Zombie on this album. There will be one song that I'll talk about in a minute where Joey appears. But as far as the critics, it was mostly positive, but a little more mixed than the original. So Metacritic gave it a 63 out of 100 out of 10 reviews, and Entertainment Weekly gave the album a B-. So as far as the critics were concerned, it wasn't as good. I thought it was still pretty cool. Now let me go track by track for Hellbilly Deluxe 2, because that's really the main topic of this video. Opening track, Jesus Frankenstein. I thought it was pretty cool. It wasn't one of the singles, but it's just really a fun track. Lots of heavy metal guitar riffs and industrial drum beats. I think it's very different. I think the guitar playing really stands out. And it also has this catchy industrial chorus, and they use the horror synth in the different sections. It's one of those songs that has like an odd time structure. It's not like a typical verse, chorus, verse type of thing. I thought it was pretty cool, being that it is a deep cut. The next track is Sick Bubblegum. It was one of the singles. It has a catchy chorus. It has a retro music video. I think when I was watching the music video, I thought it reminded me of that house from the House of a Thousand Corpses set. I'm not sure if that's true, but as for the singles, I think it's decent, but not as memorable as the singles from the first album. So I think it's a good song, but I think this is the type of album that has better deep cuts, which I'll get into. Next song is called What, with a question mark. Has a hard driving guitar riff, has pretty cool keyboards. This is one of those songs, it's upbeat and energetic. And there's one thing I like about it, because it has these keyboards and it gave it this retro 60s sound. After this is a song called Mars Needs Women. So if you're a fan of B movies, you will know that this was the name of an old movie that came out like in the 50s or something like that. It has lots of funky guitar riffs, and this is another one that had a live performance music video. And this one has Joey Jordison playing drums in it. So it's definitely like one of the tracks that stands out because Joey Jordison is on this one. After the track called Werewolf Baby, very industrial sounding track. It reminded me of the band Ministry. I like the fact that it has this blues rock and slide guitar. So they're using like these different like guitar styles, different guitar effects. They're being a little more experimental, so I like that. And they also have this like scary piano music into it, so that was pretty cool. Next one is called Virgin Witch. This one wasn't too memorable, and I'm reading the comments while I'm just listening to it on YouTube Music, and all the people are saying he stole this riff from this band called The Sword, and the song is called Freya. So I listened to both of them. They're kind of similar. I'm not going to play them both in this video. If you want, you can like look it up. But I think the riffs are similar, but I don't know. It's not a big deal. But in all honesty, this wasn't one of the better songs. Next song is called Death and Destiny Inside. This is a short song. It's 2 minutes long. I thought it was like a punk rock song. Another one that was one of the more forgettable ones. I didn't really think it was that great of a song, but it's decent. After this is pretty cool, a song called Burn. I like the guitar riff. The guitar riffs were more nu metal. They incorporated these different clean guitar riffs and also more of this bluesy rock riffs. I thought it was something more like a Led Zeppelin type of guitar riff. I like that part about it, so I think this is one of the better deep cuts. After this, the track is called Cease to Exist. This one has an industrial sound. They use lots of sound clips. And this one was a little different because they used these slow and sludgy guitar riffs and lots of trippy and psychedelic keyboard sounds. I was listening to this song with my earphones, and I could hear these different like sound bites in both of the channels of the earphones. So that was really cool. And a lot of people in the comments were comparing this to both like Black Sabbath and even Marilyn Manson. So I think this is one of the better songs. I think it's one of the better deep cuts. Next song is Werewolf Women of the SS, and this is actually based on a trailer for a film that doesn't exist. Rob Zombie, as you know, he does directing, he does movie maker, and there's this Quentin Tarantino movie that came out around 2007. It was a collaboration between Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez called Grindhouse. It was a tribute to those exploitation movies, and I think they were called Planet Terror and Death Proof. So when this came out, there were like these fake trailers that were part of that whole movie, of that double feature movie. One was Werewolf Women of the SS, and that was one that was made by Rob Zombie. The song is really good. It has sound effects, it has a fast rhythm, has this surf music guitar, and I thought it was pretty cool. It just had this really cool 60s retro sound that is with the heavy metal sound of Rob Zombie. There was one more song called The Man Who Laughs, and kind of strange because it's a long song, 9 minutes, 44 seconds. If you listen to Rob Zombie, you know, his albums are pretty short and straight to the point. Most of them have like 30-minute runtimes, but for some reason this one was a little longer. And this song is basically a movie score with lots of industrial elements and cool guitar riffs. It was a faster paced song, but there are also these psychedelic rock elements and different like violins and different instruments. It had a very theatrical sound. The sound of it really created lots of suspense. But this song had something that was very different, and it had this extended drum solo, something like one of those like Inagata-Devita types of drum solos, which was really cool. And it went on for, I think it must have been like 5 minutes or so, a really long solo. So it's the last song, and I thought it was pretty cool. So in conclusion, is this album any good? I think this album lacks memorable singles, but I think it has some really cool deep cuts, the type of songs that you probably wouldn't normally listen to when you listen to Rob Zombie. Because when I listen to music, I have a lot of Rob Zombie songs come up on my playlist, and it's mostly songs from the first album. I'm talking about Hellbilly Deluxe. I like listening to Living Dead Girl and Dragula, and those songs come up a lot in my playlist. But these songs are ones that I don't listen to that much, but I probably should a little more, because I think there are some cool deep cuts. The album lacks singles, but there are some pretty cool stuff here. So I think it's not as good as the first album, but I think it's pretty decent. I think it would probably rank somewhere in the middle of his discography. I would have to do another ranking. I did one a long time ago, back when he released his last album, 2021. I should probably do an update at some point, but it's decent. So that's all I want to say. Check out my ranking of Rob Zombie's albums. I'm going to stick that right there. I did it back in 2021 when he released his last album. Thanks for watching. Give the video a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you in the next one.